Welcome, everybody, to Body Ecology Living. I'm kind of excited about this show today. It's different from the shows that I usually do because I asked a friend, a longtime friend of mine, to be on and for us to talk about some of the things we've done together over the years, many years, I think maybe 20 years now. Maria Hunt is my guest. And Maria is head of all the body ecology coaches over in Australia. Well, we don't have body ecology coaches in America. I used to go over about every year and a half and train this wonderful group of almost always women to understand body ecology at a deeper level and be able to help people. And Maria found me and came over here and trained with me. And when you look back at all the things we've done together, like we've been very, very instrumental in the autism community over there. So I'll just read her bio a little bit. She is a health practitioner, of course. She's an educator, big time. And she's actually a media spokesperson. She shares her love for health through television and print and online media. She's a spokesperson and for a company called Grainfields over in Australia. And she's just really an expert in fermentation and an expert in knowing body ecology. I don't know if anybody understands body ecology to the depth that Maria does, except me. So welcome, Maria, for coming on tonight. Well, your morning. It's 10 a.m. in the morning over there and 8 o'clock at night my time.
Cheers. Thank you, Donna, so much. It's wonderful for being here. Yeah. How exciting. Nearly 20 years. Well, I think it must be 20 years that we've
Yeah,
known.
because it's been at least 17, isn't it, since we started working with autism? And I knew you before that. So at least.
Yeah. I jumped on
Time
the
flies.
plane. I went over to Atlanta, Georgia for the training and remember meeting at the Mind Conference, and you
Yeah,
and
so
I.
first we met at this conference somewhere in some very rural place. And that's where I first met Maria. And she was so sincere and so intent on learning this. And she actually went back to Australia. And I don't remember in the years that pursued, but I do know that I was invited to the Mind Conference. You probably helped set that up, Maria, didn't you?
No, that was with Leslie. Yeah. But
Yeah,
yeah, with
but I
Leslie.
mean, getting me invited over there. But it was really the beginning days of, so Mind, let's tell people what Mind is. MINND. What does it stand for?
Yeah, that's the so Leslie Emberts, she's running or ran that. Oh gosh, she must be 25 years odd ago, and she was very instrumental in with the autism community and getting the doctors and everyone grouped together. And she ran the conference, and I remember attending the conference and listening to you. And I was researching. I'd had health problems at the time and I was looking for the missing link. I'd done many, many modalities, gluten-free, casein-free, GAPS diet, everything, but nothing was getting me over the line. And then when I listened to you, I thought, wow, this is it. And then you said, I've got a training coming up in so many weeks' time. And I just went, that's it. So I booked the flight, jumped on the plane and went over. And then we were in Atlanta, Georgia. That's right. And it was a beautiful location there. And it was just fantastic because it was the missing link for me, Donna. It was all about the beneficial bacteria. And, you know, we were so ahead of our time back then. Well, you were so ahead of your time back then. But it really synced it in after all in the context of all of the information that we gathered. This was missing, this whole segment of the beneficial bacteria and having the gut up and working.
And then also yeast too. That was a big part of what
Yes.
we were doing too, is conquering the yeast infection. So fast forward just a little bit,
Mhm.
and we found ourselves at the Mind Conference. We had a table there. Grainfields actually was hosting us there at that table, and I was speaking, and we were just flooded with people, doctors, that were interested in the work, and parents, of course, but it was all brand new to the people back in those days. People didn't even have any clue why the kids had autism. So just having you there through all of that with me was fantastic. Having someone else who really was as passionate as I was. But after I left, you were still back in Australia. And can you sort of talk about what happened at that point with the doctors and
Yes, well,
how it started spreading.
yeah, I was really fortunate that I worked alongside a medical doctor, Dr. Kritikos, I still do, in Sydney, and he's a biomedical doctor. He's expert with methylation, zinc, copper, pyrroles, and so he asked me to join over in his practice, which I did. And so it worked beautifully. It was so synergistic, and we were cross referring to each other where we'd work on the methylation. But he also knew he had to have the gut up and working at optimum level so that, we were absorbing all the vitamins and minerals and all of the state of art, protocols that we're implementing. So it was an incredible synergy of having body ecology there, working alongside John and the other doctors. And then that grew out into, there was the other biomedical groups, and they were really grassroots. And Jan was one of the other ladies where she kicked that off. And the grassroots of getting all of the families together and then bringing the doctors in as guest speakers. And then we would come in and teach fermentation. And there were wild times then, all the fermenting jars, and the parents were excited. And then they were bubbling, quart jars everywhere. And it was really, really beneficial to everyone.
And there was results. I mean, kids are actually getting well.
Yeah, that was this slow and steady result of like cleaning out, like as we always say, we needed to create the energy. Your four main points always stay with me. Create energy, correct digestion, conquer infections, and cleanse. And that's where we did, again, one of the principles of body ecology was the step by step. So we took that step by step. We needed to create the energy because so many of the children and the parents as well, they were so depleted. They didn't have the energy to get well. And you'd always taught me, Maria, you've got to have the energy to get well. Otherwise, we're not going to get across the line. So dealing with the thyroid, the adrenals, getting that foundation, that base foundation there that was solid, so we could create the energy. Then we could work on correcting the digestion, bringing in, and, eliminating the sugars, balancing out the yeasts, getting all of that into proportion, removing inflammatory foods, the glutens, the dairies, etc., and then coming back in and conquering those infections. Because why? They've got the ability, then they've got the energy to be able to conquer infections, because the poor little kids, they couldn't conquer the infections before. They didn't have the energy or the digestion there to do it. So with your principles and what you taught us, it was to conquer those infections, get on top of them, and then be able to cleanse. And again, you've got to have the energy to cleanse. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to release those toxins. So we were doing, home enemas to colonics to getting out, all of the impurities, etc., and the toxins and the parasites and worms that nobody wants to talk about, but they're there. And I used to love it coming over to see, I'm going to divert for a moment. I would fly in Sydney to LAX. You'd pick me up, or your beautiful daughter Meredith. Then we'd hightail to West Hollywood to Luis, the, colon therapist extraordinaire. And he would do the soaking method of the colonics. And it was just, you'd lie back there on a viewing screen, checking out, releasing these toxins. Netflix is nothing on to seeing the screen of the toxins being
And the
released.
parasites,
And
all the biofilms. The thing is, Maria, only a few people have seen these. And, Luis has done over 40,000 colonics. He has many, 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 many videos and pictures and everything. And I've actually even taken some of those to some conferences and showed them to people, hoping they would, realize what we've got inside of us. And they're not even interested at all, which is unfortunate because, people are willing to accept the idea of fecal implants. We talk about parasites, but nobody's talking about colon therapy and how it, and done properly, you can get these clumps of parasites out. They do live in biofilms, not always, sometimes too, but single ones, but changing, getting those out is a game changer. It totally changes your personality. Everything is, I mean, just almost always happy after that. And I always cringe when people say, oh, some parasites are okay. That's all right to have some in us, but that's not true at all. Everyone that leaves, it takes out the toxins that it takes out, really gets you closer to being really, really healthy. But even children, I remember, for one thing, it's really interesting because we started, of course, with children. You can't do clonics. They're 3 years old, for example. So we started with enemas. I
Yeah.
remember when I first, so we had a group called Bedrock, BEDROK, which was really parents from all over the world. They were sharing what they were learning and what they were seeing, and we were all learning together. But there were people in Hong Kong and
Oh,
UK and Canada and all over the world, really, that were in part of the group. When I introduced the concept, said, because the kids were having always cleansing, of course. You kill the yeast, they're going to feel awful. And
mhm.
they go through something that looks like a flu. So I thought, they really need enemas, but I was a little hesitant to introduce them to this modern, women that have no idea what it is. But sure enough, some did it, of course, and reported back to the group amazing, amazing stories of changes in their child. I just remember one comment that was real common that brothers would say is that he's only been here 2.5 years or 3 years. What is, how can he have all this toxic stuff coming out of him? And the kids got to the point where they loved them and they actually would bring the enema bucket to the mother when they wanted to have an enema because they felt so much better. So it was really some amazing stories at that time. But the thing is, the they accepted it right away. Awful stuff came out, but what I wish I'd been able to explain better at that time, years ago, is that those toxins weren't in them when they were born. They're being created in real time. For example, the children have a strong, life force to cleanse, and so those toxins were in the cells because they were a whole lot of them were endogenous toxins being processed by the liver, going into the bile, ending up in the stool, but not going anywhere. And so they just really couldn't get well until we started opening those detoxification pathways, which really, when you say colon therapy, it's not a good name because you think you're
Yeah.
just working with a colon. You're cleansing the entire body that way. And I think it was the whole program, the diet, the fact that we were addressing yeast. We were also working on, establishing that healthy inner ecosystem, which was having a profound effect on the brain, for example, which
Yes.
is one of the big things wrong with them is their behavior. And change that. They began to respond. They began to eat other foods they wouldn't eat before. It was an amazing time. And I'm so glad that you were there with me because once I left Australia, you were left behind and you just did amazing things. Just hung in there and kept communicating and letting people know. And then when you got on TV, that was amazing to me too. I was really glad you did it, but you really told the world about body ecology through your TV show. So do you want to talk about some of the
Yeah.
experiences you had and the feedback that you got with that?
Yeah. Incredible feedback. And we're still going. So it's over 14 years now that we're still going on TVSN, the health channel, which is incredible because if you're not, being, received, you don't last. You get kicked off pretty quickly.
Well,
So
why were you received? What was it? Was it just the amazing information or people were learning about stuff for the first time or why
every
was it so well received?
Yeah, it was everything. It was the amazing information. It was the amazing results that we got from the fermented probiotic drinks and the powders. We were getting tremendous results, or we still do. We still are getting tremendous results. And it's a game changer. It's a life changer. So people, you know, this works. So when you can get your zest back for life, when you can have that clarity, that vitality, and you feel good, look good, people really want it. And then they can pass that down to their family, to their children, their grandchildren. That's what was driving it as well. It wasn't just the individual who was first buying on TV. It was their ability to be able to spread that knowledge and information that we were giving them with their family. And I would have like email after email and phone calls saying, Thank you. And just the other day, this wonderful man, he rang and he said he has both elderly parents and his sister that are all on the body ecology, the drinks, the powders, etc. They're all on that and making a huge difference. He's early 60s, his parents are 80s and 90s, but they're really having a quality of life. They're not just older, they're having a quality of life. So there's an array from the children to the parents to the grandparents, etc., where everyone's reaping the benefits.
Hmm. And speaking of aging, you really haven't aged all these years. Your skin is amazing. Um,
Thank you.
I mean, I would definitely go on record and say that this eating these fermented foods and doing what we're doing absolutely affects how well, just simply age better. So even if these parents were like 90 years old, you see in results. But imagine when you catch somebody who's 30. And what I've noticed today is that there are a lot of young people, I'm amazed actually, because it didn't used to be like this. But young people in their 30s are already thinking ahead, like, what can I do now so I don't age? Which is amazing to me. So, we also kind of have one of the secrets for having more years going by, chronological years, but biologically, you're not aging like other people your age are doing. So, would you agree with that?
100%. And that's getting back in there and getting the digestion up and going. And mine's always a work in progress. I mean, I'm always working on it and there's hiccups along the way, but hey, we're all human. But getting the digestion, getting the sleep, the good food, and the exercise and that meditative state, whatever it is, whether it's, cross stitching for someone or, 2 hours of meditation, it doesn't matter. It's coming back in and being able to just to relax and reduce the stresses down. But once we can do that, then our gut and our body, our whole hormones, endocrine system, everything just responds and we start humming along. But when we're under that constant bombardment of toxins and stress, etc., that's aging and that's debilitating. And that is the game changer to turn that around.
Well, one of the things looking back that we were both very much into, and really it kind of definitely sprang from the kids who had autism, was oxalates in our food. Now, it's surprisingly taken decades for people to start, paying attention to oxalates. And now all of a sudden you ask a large number of healthy people like that are into health, they have heard about oxalates and they've probably heard a few talks. I did a wonderful two-part podcast with Sally K. Norton. She wrote a book, Toxic Superfoods, and please go back and listen to that too. But this
Mm.
whole oxalate journey is not new to us. We've been on it for a really long time and have found out how really important it is. And so would you speak to that a little bit? Over there in Australia, are people into oxalates yet? Because it's definitely finally getting hot here.
I'm the crusader. I've been on oxalate. How long? You and I have been on oxalates for, must be 15 years, like a long
17, at least 17, because
years.
Susan Owens, she really gets the credit for being there, digging deep into it and getting information from the parents. The parents noticed that when the kids ate foods high in oxalates, they had a terrible reaction. And
Mhm.
even some of them have scratched their eyes out. I did a podcast a long time ago with the man who started Great Plains. They test for oxalates, they test for yeast. And
Well, I'm
you
sure.
always see yeast and oxalates high. That's because yeast make oxalates too. And then we also have it in our diet. Every child with autism has a yeast infection. So this was going on big time. Susan Owens was like really kind of like the bank for keeping the information. Julie Matthews, like us, she's coached parents for years. She also was in and has been into oxalates all these years. Well, in one of the summits, Julie and I talked about that, the genes related to oxalates. But so, Maria, let me turn the oxalate conversation over to you. What would you say about it?
I'm so passionate about oxalate. As you know, like we're going back, that 17 odd years that we've been doing it. And it's so profound. And like you and I have both suffered, where it does affect us is in our eyes for us. So it's a different, symptomatic effect for each person. But for me, I had very dry eye, incredibly dry eye. And I'm endogenous with the oxalate, so I produce oxalates as well. And with that, they were that bad that my eyelid would get stuck on my eyeball. It was so, so painful. And
Your eyelid,
yeah,
it,
would be
it would
stuck.
just dry up so much. Yeah, that's painful.
Yeah, and I was driving. I was doing a lot of long distance driving, and I'd be, putting drops in all of the time. It was horrendous. And but I was very fortunate that I have a very good surgeon, and we did amniotic membrane graft on both eyes, and it's state of the art. So this is putting the membranes there on the eyes, so it prevents that moisture. It helps to balance back out, and so that's been a game changer for me. Just to help with that, again with the low ox diet, the body ecology diet, and the beneficial drops that we use, it's really, really helped to the effect that 2 weeks ago I just had a checkup there, and the optic nerve is actually improved. So this here, when you get a plan together like that to fight oxalates, it's amazing. But oxalates, I used to have horrendous UTIs, and the back pain was like I would have to roll out of bed in the morning on like a commando roll, and then crawl up the wall. The pain was that
Mm.
bad. And then it
You
was
think
the
that was from oxalates?
Oh, 100%, 100%. And then I started working more, increasing the B1, the B6, dealing with, producing too many oxalates in my body, balancing that back out. I use a lot of golden seal. I was using Epsom salt baths, getting, the Body Ecology ancient earth minerals to get alkaline, all of those alkaline protocols to help balance it out. But what was amazing though is you could have the colonics. And I remember Luis and I talking about it. He was saying the little sandy pebbles down the bottom of the viewing screen, that was the oxalates being released.
Mhm.
So
And actually, people can see that in the toilet. They'll
yeah,
flush the toilet, and then there'll be sort of like a trace of sand, black sand. That's oxalates. It's like
exactly.
another
And I've
way to
had
diagnose it. Yeah.
so many of my clients come in, and they've actually had the oxalate, the crystals coming out their fingernails. They've squeezed them out of their eye, just all different locations of the skin, out the side of the mouth, especially with the children. I had a 85-year-old just 2 days ago, and she was squeezing it and getting with the tweezers, taking it off the top of her wrists. And so she was an avid, spinach and silver beet consumer. And
We just say beets over here.
beets, yeah. And so
Beets.
these, this oxalic acid was converting into the crystals and just causing mayhem, and joints, swelling of the joints, the pseudo gout, the mystery eczema, all of those things. And I had beautiful little clients. They come in, a little 3-year-old, and she go, Maria, she was just screaming. She goes, hot wheeze, hot wheeze. And as she'd urinate, it was just burning her totally. And then, within no time at all, she'd come back smiling away, so excited that, she could go to the bathroom and didn't have that excruciating pain. And,
That reminds me, though, that when you start going on a low oxalate
mm,
diet, you can have what some people call dumping, but in other words, you're cleansing those toxins out of your body, and then you'll have the same symptoms again. So that could have also been something that she was going through. Was she already on the body ecology diet? Was she addressing yeast? Because they're really,
but
I
when she
think
first
the reason people are so sensitive to the oxalates have become a problem is, first of all, we've had antibiotics and we've wiped out those few good bacteria
came,
whose job it is to digest, to handle the oxalates and bind them up so that they're in the stool and they leave the body. And I think that we have the same thing, antibiotics. Uh, the yeast are actually making the oxalates big time. And it's so common today because another thing I never hear anybody saying, maybe there's no major research on this yet, but a mother can pass her yeast infection on to her child. She'll have a yeast infection. It'll become more acute during the pregnancy because progesterone goes up, estrogen, glucose goes up. Those things are supposed to go up during pregnancy, but they also take her maybe mild, maybe just
Yeah.
low-grade chronic yeast infection, and it will become more acute. And then babies are born with it. You'll see that they have cradle cap, which, by the way, I think is interesting because that's a biotin deficiency, and yeast uh, use the biotin. They eat up the biotin because the biotin's suppressing the yeast. I thought it was interesting because recently Chris Masterjohn put out one of his little short videos on biotin and oxalates. So he's now recommending that people add that to that list of other B vitamins, B6, for example, and that biotin should be in one of the B vitamins you take for helping overcome a sensitivity to oxalates.
Yeah.
But anyway, the babies are born often with a yeast infection, either a diaper rash, or they often have cradle cap, and that is a sign of a biotin deficiency.
And that colic.
Again, there's colic, because nobody tells mothers when the kids are born that, okay, baby's out now, everything's normal, got all the body parts supposed to be in the right place. Now it's time to work on that inner ecosystem. That is so
Mm.
important to set that into place at birth. And doctors don't know that. Nobody tells mothers that. Disappointingly, even midwives who are supposed to be sort of more holistic
Yeah.
don't mention this. It's like part of what a woman should be taught as she's going through her entire pregnancy. So, yes, we end up with a lot of children. The last I heard back in the day when we started, it was 1 in 80 kids. If you agree with that, I
Do
think that's what it
remember.
was.
Yeah.
Now it's one boy in 40 instead of
Yeah.
1 in 180. More boys are being diagnosed with autism, and there's no reason for that. It's preventable. I think we have very important, answers for that, actually. So, well, one thing we haven't talked about are the body ecology coaches over there. I think this is a really good time for them to become more active. We have long haulers, we have chronic
Yes.
fatigue, and really long haulers are really pretty much this exact same thing. But I just feel that our body ecology coaches can really help them a lot. So I wanted to, uh, you're really the head of them, and you know all of them very well. Can you want to say anything about the coaches in Australia?
Yeah, I think there's a prime opportunity, like you're saying, to help with the long haulers, because it is, and it's going to be a very extensive problem. So it's a great opportunity for them, and they're so passionate to spread it and to get the word out there, to help people, to help the families, to help the children, because it's debilitating. If anyone's ever, been ill, and that's why I become so passionate. I know what it's like to be ill. So if you can help in any way, I really want to help people. I never want them to go through what we've gone through. So to have that opportunity from, what you've given us is phenomenal, to be able to spread the word.
Well, so we were talking recently, Maria and I, and we decided really it's time to pull the CBEs back into a
Mm,
even though online course
yeah.
to catch them up to date on long haulers. Because as soon as they started showing up in the world, I just turned to that. I knew a lot about yeast. They have a yeast infection because the
Mm,
virus, the SARS-CoV-2 virus, activates yeast infection, but it also wakes up all these viruses that are living in our body, Epstein-Barr, all the herpes families. They're just all awake now. So I turned my attention really to a, a diet. Basically, I right now call it the antiviral diet, which is, it's not as, it's more strict. Usually with candida, you need to be on the diet 3 months
mm.
pretty strictly to get the results. The antiviral diet, 4 to 10 days to begin to get results. And then there's other things to do also. I have a podcast with Dr. Gallant, Leo Gallant. He's amazing. We talk about how um, the virus, when it enters the cell, it damages the receptor we always hear about, the ACE2 receptor. And
Sure.
it doesn't just enter there, excuse me, it doesn't just enter there, it actually damages the ACE2 receptor, which
Hmm.
has so many critical roles in the body. And it's the ACE2 receptors in the gut, in the brain, in the kidneys, in the lungs. Now these organs are damaged. And so we talk about in that podcast his whole program on repairing that ACE2
Mm.
enzyme, that receptor. And that's a really important one too. So I feel like because we have so many wonderful CBEs that this is going to be something to quickly, because we already have a great understanding of body ecology principles, and just tweaking a little bit more and explaining, how to, uh,
Yeah,
what you have to do to get the virus, to get these I always refer to them
like
like,
this
think of a
drag.
virus like like a dragon comes out of his hiding place, his little viral sanctuary that he's tucked away in, and they come out when the body becomes too acidic, which happens when you eat the typical acidic diet,
Yeah.
very inflammatory diet. So the virus comes out, the dragon comes out of the cave, and your goal is to get him back in there, because he's always going to live there. He's never going to go away, but you can make him stay in there, make him go back in there and stay there with his diet. So I'm excited
And
about bringing this out into the world.
I think, yeah, Donna, it's prime time, but also too to overlay the antiviral, obviously the candida, the oxalates, all of that there, because they're so inflammatory and they're so demanding on the body. The oxalates, I've seen so much damage from oxalates, even for the long haulers coming in to see me, and to get that back into balance. It's to take that toxic load off, and to prevent the damage from occurring and the buildup. And people are unaware that they're actually producing oxalates in their body. And in doing that, they need to really get protocols together for that. That's why I'm so passionate. I'm running an online course on a low ox eating, and on the actual simplification of it, and putting that, like you're saying, with the antiviral protocol, that then it's kind of like a force field. It's a lock and lock force field to
Mm.
protect the body and against the invaders coming in. But I've always loved the dragon in the cave. We've got to keep the dragon in the cave, stop it coming out with the acid body, the lack of good bacteria. When we sleep, we're run down. It's very, very hard to actually fight against those invaders coming through.
And so the CBEs know about the antiviral diet, exactly what to do if you have a virus, if you have a seasonal flu. What I've just done is I've just dug deeply into what's going on behind the scenes, why, the big why. And that's what I'd like to, and I'm going to be having a course on that too. So this is good. Well, Maria, where can people reach you? And because you can talk to people anywhere in the world, you don't have to be living in Australia, right?
No, so I do consults worldwide, etc. So they can reach me at Body Ecology at mariahunt.com.au. That's my email. Or they can go to yourdigestion.com.au. And I'd love to catch up. Very, very happy to work together, whichever. I always like to, from what I've learned from everything that we've done together, Donna, and also too on that emotional, physical, mental level, we need to bring it all together to, that whole healing process is vital to bring down the stresses, to be able to manage the stress in our body. And for that, that's really super, super important for me to marry it all together.
And the thing is, you can give people the right information, but
Mm-hmm.
they need support. What the parents had back in the days that we first started is we had bedrock. We had
Mm-hmm.
eventually 2,000 families and a lot of even doctors learning,
Yeah.
sharing information. But it was a support group. And so now, if want to have a consultation with Maria, or have the oxalate class, or find a body ecology over there, body ecology coach over there in Australia that really support is what you need. You can't do this, it's too complicated. I did a podcast with Tess Masters not too long, just a few days ago, and we were talking about bio individuality, and we brought up oxalates, and we brought up FODMAPs, for example. Some, people need to tweak the diet, find the FODMAP foods, and just get rid of those. Like, don't, for a while anyway, and then take one, like maybe cauliflower is one that can cause gas and bloating. It's on the FODMAP, it's one of the foods to avoid. So, but maybe you're fine with cauliflower, so you test it out. Anyway, we have to. Fortunately, we have so much great information available today. So the diets generally, there's a general diet that works, but then you have to tweak it for you individually, and that's why really working with a practitioner is important, I think.
And the tweaking, like you say, Donna, it's very important, again, with the dumping or the releasing of yeasts or viral
Hmm.
loads when we're conquering infections. That really is a step-by-step process. And
And the thing is, people might think, "Oh, it's not working. I've been doing this for 2 weeks,
yeah,
and now all of a sudden I feel awful." That's because it's working. So if you're working with a, because things are dying off like they're supposed to, and so if you're working with a practitioner, they can say, "Oh, you're doing exactly the right thing. Congratulations. You're just
that's the
cleansing
yeah, that's
yourself."
the conundrum of it all. But to have that support, and that's why people say to me, it is brilliant and so, reassuring to have that support and be able to
Hmm.
talk through those challenging times, because there'll always be challenging times. It's just how we handle it. But having the protocols, having everything there and the toolbox to put that into place, especially when the overwhelm comes in. Many people get overwhelmed, and to be able to deal with that as well as on the physical side, that is a game changer.
Hmm. Well, thank you very much, my dear friend, for being here tonight, but for much, much more than being here tonight. You've just been so instrumental in helping body ecology spread around the world, around Australia especially, and on TV, TVSN.
Enjoying it.
So I just can't thank you enough, and that's why I wanted to do this podcast together. Some
Good.
people might find
Yeah.
it was helpful, which is
Thank
what
you,
we're both
Donna.
about. So
Yeah.
thank you.
And I've had well, I'm having a fortunate life, but us meeting, 20 odd years ago, that's making it a very fortunate life. And I really, really thank you for the incredible wealth of knowledge and expertise and our adventures together, piecing this all together. I'd be over there nearly every year staying with you. You would put me up in your home, pick me up from the
Of
airport,
course,
run me around.
absolutely.
We'd go shopping together with Winston, your beautiful little puppy dog. We'd just it was
We were
fantastic.
done
We're going to
there.
get back over
Well, to be continued, of course. Please come anytime you want. I mean, it's just nice to have a soulmate, like somebody who gets you and understands you. So you've been a wonderful friend. So thank you very much, Maria.
there. Thank you.